Welcome back to Trench Talk, because you need to be told what to listen to. I'm your host, Flight of Icarus from MetalTrenches.com. As always, if you haven't already, please check out the website for daily underground metal band reviews. While you're at it, follow us on your favorite social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Vero, Twitter. We also have samplers that you can pick up on our Bandcamp. And of course, we have a Patreon. If you enjoy what we're doing here, please consider contributing at least $1 a month to help keep us going and continue to grow and expand in what we're doing here. All right, we are just 1 week away from our second top 10 of 2018 list. But before we get there, I wanted to get to one last album. Today, we're going to talk about For I Am King with their new album, I, through Redfield Records. For I Am King is a Dutch band. They're kind of treading the line between melodeath and metalcore. I liken them a lot to kind of Darkest Hour, where you've got that mixture of very Gothenburgy riffs and harmonies with more kind of As I Lay Dying kind of style as well, but without the singing and just kind of sticking more to the straightforward heaviness, which is what I hope will end up appealing to the more hardcore death metal fans out there. The vocals are very harsh, and speaking of which, our vocalist here is one Alma Alizadeh. I'm probably butchering that pronunciation. And I thought I'd take a quick break here to just talk about my thoughts on female metal vocalists, because I see a lot, especially now with just a lot of the gender discussions that are going on. Metal has kind of gotten roped into this. But I mean, for me personally, I don't care if your singer is male, female, trans, whatever. All that matters to me is if your band is good. And, you know, if your band is shit, then I'm not going to listen to it regardless of who happens to be fronting it. So really, that's all that matters to me. But I do think there is some value, and occasionally I'll make, like, you know, my favorite female metal singer lists and things of that nature. I'm always looking for topics for a list, and that seems to be like an interesting one that I like doing. I also just kind of see it the same way I look at why I cover underground bands. There's just fewer of them. You don't hear as much about them sometimes. So the same way I want to take an underground band and bring it forward because all these mainstream bands are taking over, I do think it's worth finding really great bands that have female vocalists, and again, just because there are fewer of them, bringing them into the limelight to really have an opportunity for people to just hear it and go, wow, this is really good stuff. On the flip side of that, though, and I'm not going to speak for what it's like to be a woman in the metal scene, because I don't know what that's actually like, but I will say that when it comes to fandom, and for myself and the people I know and have known over the many years, they're like me. They really could give a shit what gender you are playing for your band. All they care about is your music good? And to the people out there who are making comments about how, like, you know, women aren't accepted in metal and a metal band with a female singer is less likely to be successful, I mean, I haven't really looked at the data on that, but just anecdotally in terms of, again, talking to a lot of people and seeing what a lot of people listening to and communicating with people all the time, I just have a hard time believing that. I say look at Arch Enemy. You've got, first of all, like a huge band with a female singer that's insanely popular and is known by name, and everyone really enjoyed Angela as a vocalist. She wasn't hard on the eyes, but again, in the people that I knew coming into this scene, that wasn't really the main point. People were talking about how intense her vocals were and how much they loved them. And just adding on top of that, too, this is a band where they started with a male singer and had a female singer take over. And how many people out there actually remember the original singer's name? I'm willing to bet not that many, but how many people know Angela Gossow by name? Probably a lot more than that. So I just feel like that's a good example of, if your music is good, it doesn't fucking matter. And if you'll even just humor me for a little bit longer, I was also making the comment recently that there are all these people with movies that are kind of doing the same thing, where anytime a movie with a female lead or the female leads, most classically the Ghostbusters reboot, when those movies don't do well or there's lots of criticism and people complaining about them, I feel like we constantly jump immediately to the narrative of, oh, America's just sexist and you don't like strong women leads in movies and yada, yada, yada. And my response to that was, I grew up with Alien, Jurassic Park, and Scream, and Kill Bill. Those movies had amazing female leads that I really looked up to. And they didn't have to make a big deal either about like shoehorning in little girl power lines and everything and making a big show out of it. They just made a good movie that was enjoyable, that just happened to have a really great female lead. I feel like it's the same way across mediums. Ideally, that's the way it should be. If you're complaining that your movie or your band or whatever isn't making it and you're immediately jumping to that conclusion, I would ask you to re-examine and say, maybe my stuff just isn't that good. Maybe it's not up to quality. Maybe I need to turn inward and improve on my work. But thankfully, all that said, let me transition back to For I Am King, because they are up to quality. Really the point I want to drive home here is that this band is worth your time. Alma is basically the Ripley of death metal and metalcore. And I did appreciate that when I got this band to review, they didn't really play up the whole female fronted thing a ton in the press release. I usually get an email with like a big subject banner that's like female fronted, blah, 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 blah. It wasn't the case with this band. I didn't know they had a female lead singer until I clicked on one of the music videos and saw Alma right there in front of me. And again, for me, I was like, oh, that's cool. But then I moved on because I was just like, her vocals are awesome, and that's all that matters to me. They do mention it briefly in the actual like band bio, but they've got this big paragraph, and that doesn't come up until like the last 3 sentences or so. In terms of Alma as the vocalist, again, she's really great. She is straight up all about the harsh vocals, very just deep death delivery, no singing, very solid, very similar to both Angela and Alyssa's presentation on Arch Enemy. You're going to hear that. But she also throws in this really nice kind of blackened wretch. Especially you'll hear this all over the track, In Flames.
She will burn your houses and destroy the world. She steals your soul silently by night. We live in an existence of hatred so cold. Our world is ending tonight. The day we know is now left with hate and disgrace. There is a curse in this place.
So I like that she adds that extra variation. I kind of get bored when a growler kind of just sticks with the same style the entire time. So she kind of jumps around in her tone. But again, if you're coming into this as not big into like the metalcore style, don't run away just yet, because this album keeps things pretty heavy. It's not Bullet for My Valentine or any of that stuff. Also, really incredible guitars. So these guys are just they're the real stars of the show for me. Being somebody who is a big fan of guitar and plays some guitar, not nearly as well as these guys, just amazing stuff. Lots of great harmonies and solos. And I'm hearing in the guitars so many allusions to just past amazing albums from both early 2000s metalcore and also melodic death metal as well. So Arch Enemy's Wages of Sin, All That Remains is This Darkened Heart, Dark Tranquillity's Damage Done, As I Lay Dying's An Ocean Between Us, In Flames' Reroute to Remain, Darkest Hours, Undoing Ruin. I could go on and on and on, but there's so much of all of those things kind of distilled down into this one really great, consistent album with all these great tracks. And you're definitely going to hear all of that classic Gothenburg palm muting alternated with really catchy melodies and that kind of classic early In Flames dual guitar approach. You hear a lot of this on the track Home. And just further showcasing the guitar player's skills, we've got this really cool kind of neoclassical interlude on the track Invidia. Just again, really playing up how talented these guys are, how many kind of different styles they're able to pull in, how proficient they are. The performance is top notch, and the production also really just highlights how strong their songwriting and performance skills are. Now again, lots of metalcore tropes going on here, but arguably they've just taken sort of the best parts of metalcore and put them into this album. So again, I know people that simply saying the word metalcore makes them wince. And I'm telling you, please don't let that be the case here. Give this stuff a chance, because they're really only pulling from the great early riffs from the genre as opposed to really anything else. Particularly the track In Memory has some really strong As They Lay Dying and All That Remains vibes in their riffs, and even some of the vocal delivery, but again, without no singing going on here. Not that I mind singing, but I'm really trying to draw in as many of those kind of passive-aggressive death metal fans that really don't want to give metalcore the time of day. There's a nice combination of darker, heavier moments, alternated with more kind of uplifting ones too. So it's a really cathartic kind of album. You get your moments where there's a lot of intense headbanging and you're just going full force. And then you'll also hit these moments where it's kind of this like goosebump inducing melody that just rises you up and just makes you feel really good and really motivated. And I'm sure people who listen to a lot of this style know exactly what I'm talking about. It's hard to just define in words, but sometimes a certain melody will just hit you in a certain way and you can feel it really deeply. That's particularly true of this really epic build towards the end of the final track, and it's such a great way to close out the album with these dueling guitars that just keep building and building and kind of going back and forth. And I was really just picturing Toki and Squizgar from Metalocalypse just battling back and forth on top of two big mountaintops. And I think they would be very proud and maybe even a little bit nervous listening to this. regarding scores, I gave it a 10 for enjoyability. Every single track is awesome, start to finish, really enjoyable, super consistent. I was listening to this on repeat over and over again and plan on continuing to come back to it quite frequently. Give it a 9 for musicianship. Really well played, really well written. It's not super duper technical, but in terms of just that melodic death style, this is as good as it gets without shifting into that kind of territory. And then I gave it a 7 for innovation. Again, nothing too exciting in terms of like creativity or originality here. This is something that, especially if you're like me and, you know, you came up around Poison the Well and As They Lay Dying and all that kind of stuff, and then also, of course, Dark Tranquillity and In Flames, this is all going to sound very familiar, so just kind of see territory there. But I will give them credit, though, because we're kind of at a point right now in sort of the trend cycle as it goes, where throwing back to that early aughts sound is sort of more of a standout move than falling in with the endless Djent clones out there. And nothing against Djent, but I feel like everybody in this genre, that's what they're doing. And these guys chose not to do that. They decided to kind of go backwards and work with this older style. And I really appreciate that. Because honestly, I kind of prefer this to the kind of more modern approach. So definitely pick up this album. Really great stuff. You're going to enjoy it. You're going to be able to listen to it a lot. So it has a lot of replayability. It's worth having in your collection. But let's move on to shoutouts. First up, we've got Sectorial with YVR, and maybe I'm supposed to pronounce that as a word, but I'm not sure where to begin. This is from Noisier Productions, Noizr. Maybe it's Noisier. This is a Ukrainian black and folk band. If you like stuff like Nocturnal Mortem, Moon Sorrow, Selvins, these guys just put out this hour-long, really expansive, folk-laden album that's got all of these really cool regional instruments. I'm a big fan of the later stuff from Nocturnal Mortem, and they're both bands from the Ukraine, so they have a pretty similar style, and they've also got this kind of raw production to them too, so they kind of keep it real in terms of the black metal influences, but there's also a lot of really cool atmospheric, naturey, even progressive elements that seep into it. So definitely check that out. Next up, we've got Zapruder with their self-titled debut from Apathia Records. Zapruder is a very eclectic, experimental French mathcore band. I'd liken them to things like Autocatalytica, Cryptodyra, The Hirsch Effect. They're really all over the place with their sound. There are moments that sound kind of like Clutch, others more like Every Time I Die. There's times where the vocalist sounds kind of like he's doing a weird Elvis impersonation, sometimes more Mike Patton, other times more Greg Puciato from Dillinger Escape Plan. Really cool, especially for a debut, just all over the place and really impressively played. Awesome performances. Give it a listen. And then last but not least, we've got Disciples of the Void, also with their self-titled, this one through Primitive Reaction. Disciples of the Void are a Finnish black metal group, very much influenced by the style of Emperor, so you've got that more symphonic vibe to it. This album was interesting to listen to because I got a few songs in and I felt like, okay, like I really like this, but it's sort of your typical kind of Emperor worship kind of stuff. But once you get about halfway in to the deeper cuts, you end up with some songs that start pulling on more like Dimmu Borgir with these more aggressive rock-influenced riffs that are coming through in addition to the more straightforward traditional black metal style. There were even some moments that reminded me a little bit of early Cradle of Filth without the really obnoxious elements and without all the goth poetry and everything, but still just stylistically I was just thinking about their early work. And also there's a really killer Bathory cover at the end too, which seemed to come out of nowhere, and the vocals are very different on that one. So even though it's a little bit inconsistent and it wasn't perfect, especially for a debut, I was very impressed. I'm very excited to hear what else these guys end up doing in the future and where their sound goes. Count me intrigued. So I was just wrapping up the recording and editing of this episode, and some music news came up that I decided I really wanted to cover because it's something that's been bothering me for some time now. Black metal band out of Portland, Uada. Recently had their show canceled in Leipzig over some sort of false claims of them being associated with Nazis. Big surprise. Never heard that before in 2018. Their initial statement was, I'm just going to read this. There is never a shortness of absurdity in this world. Today we have found news that UT Konowitz has decided to cancel our show in Leipzig with Gulls Verd, Tribulation, and Idle Hands, with the false accusation of Uada being a Nazi-affiliated band. Apparently, this is not the first time that they have prevented us from playing in this city, but we hope it will be their last. It is painfully obvious that they have never met us personally, nor have any real clue as to who we are or what we represent. The accusations they have thrown out are 100% completely false, and we advise any serious bands, musicians, artists, agents, bookers, and promoters, etc. to stay away from any organization that would wrongfully and publicly brand a band such that they have done here. The show will be moved to another city, and we hope those in Leipzig that were looking forward to seeing Uada, as well as the rest of this amazing lineup, will find us on better soil. In closing, we say it's quite ballsy and ironic for a German organization or venue to call this band, who hosts one of Jewish descent, Nazis. Maybe it is time they did their homework and took a hard, long look in the mirror. And then they followed that up with another post. We've received word that there has been more booking complications due to false allegations including Uada being a right-leaning / Nazi-affiliated band. The four of us would like to officially make a statement here and now to kill all suspicions, doubts, and rumors. We are not a political band, and we absolutely do not support any sort of racism, oppression, or fascism. We are not interested in political agendas within our music because our art means more to us than spreading such bigoted idiocy. So to anyone assuming we are something we are not, it is very easy to write us directly or come out to one of our concerts to meet us. We would highly appreciate people making an effort in communication before making an assumption such as this. We take a lot of pride in truth and will always speak it on a personal level as well as through our art. No games, no facade, no bullshit. And I really appreciated that. This is a band that I caught a couple years ago at, I think it was Ash Street Saloon the first time, and then again at Dante's later on. But I remember, actually, I have kind of a funny story, random aside. I caught them, and I think it was the same day I was seeing Absu, maybe? But in any case, I was watching these bands and had to go take a leak, so I headed over to the bathroom, and I ended up in that situation where, there's a big line, and I was standing next to somebody at the urinal, and they looked over at me, and they were like, "Hey man, are you enjoying the show? What do you think about so-and-so?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, they were really good, but did you catch a WADA? Those guys were awesome." And the guy kind of laughed and was like, "Hey, I'm the guitarist and lead vocalist. Thanks for saying that." And he just seemed like, just meaning guy, good sense of humor. We only chatted for a second. But in any case, they're incredible musicians. I really loved their last album. They put out another album this year that was also really good. I really encourage supporting this band. I don't see any depth to the allegations. I was even Googling and searching to see if I could find a statement from Antifa or any of the other people protesting the situation, and I could not find a thing. Like, it was completely unclear to me where the allegations were coming from. I know there was some past show in like 2016 or 2015 where the whole venue was like protested and the show was shut down due to them allowing Gravesite to play. I'm not even sure if I'm getting that entirely right, but in any case, I just don't see the evidence. Like, show me the evidence and we can have a conversation, but just seems like completely another just random case of people making accusations and then the venue kind of getting cold feet and shutting the show down. And I mean, hey, they're the business owner. That's their prerogative, how they want their venue to be seen. They can make that decision, but it just rubs me the wrong way. I don't like setting the precedent that if we accuse you of something, even if we don't have any evidence and can't back our claims, that we can get people's shows canceled. And to me, this is even worse than the Take situation that I wrote a whole article about that I will link in the description. Like, in that, it kind of made sense because Take did the show many years ago in Germany where he came out with a swastika on his chest. I was troubled that they didn't get that it was a satirical thing. Now, I understand it, but it still annoys me because Hoest, who's the lead singer, put out this statement about it, kind of explaining what was going on, and it really made sense to me. I mean, basically, in sum, his words were, black metal's meant to be unsafe. I thought about kind of what was Germany's biggest shame and the thing that I wanted to, come out there with and confront them with, and it was their history with the Nazis. So it wasn't a statement of, hey, I am a Nazi and I support Nazis. It was, I'm going to come out here with this symbol that has some real negativity tied to your country, and I'm going to confront you with that and make you deal with it. And that I can't think of anything much more black metal than that. And you can agree with that or disagree with that. But in any case, that was a much more understandable situation to me than this one, because somebody could just see those pictures and go, oh, okay, it seems pretty clear what's going on here. And they'd be wrong, but I'd understand that better than just saying without any clear connection that, hey, these guys are Nazis and now their show's canceled. So I was really annoyed when Take's tour basically got canceled halfway through or whatever it was when he came to the US, because he's another just really incredible musician. I caught them live the year before. Just one of the best shows I've ever been to. Really impressive performers and really fun to watch on stage. Hoest is just a guy who doesn't like organized religion in general, too, because he also got criticized for having so-called like anti-Islam lyrics. But this is a guy who has a cross, upside-down cross tattooed on his chest. He just doesn't like organized religion. It's not an anti-Muslim thing, it's an anti-religion thing. Don't get those things confused and take them out of context. That doesn't make sense to me. But the bottom line is, I don't like censorship. I think it's stupid. I think it doesn't solve the problem. And to me, it's kind of ironic, and I state this in my article. These people, especially here in Portland with the Antifa population being what it is, they're kind of the new like Nancy Reagan, Tipper Gores of censorship, because you used to have, and I may have mentioned this in another podcast, but just really briefly, it used to be these kind of stuffy older types that had problems with metal music going all the way back to like Metallica and Twisted Sister and stuff like that, saying it was like the devil's music, and having this whole court proceeding to get this music taken off the shelves, and ultimately leading to that, famous parental advisory sticker that we see on stuff now. And that's shifted now to, you've got a group of these like young, misguided people. And don't get me wrong, I don't hate these Antifa people. I don't hate these protesters, and I value their right to protest. I just think they're incredibly misguided and don't really think through what they're doing, and are just kind of falling into groupthink, which is also kind of ironic because that's what they're supposed to be fighting against. But in any case, they've become the new wave of censorship people. And as somebody who listens to metal and cares deeply about metal and is all about that scene, it doesn't make sense to me to have people in the community who are actively trying to shut down people's shows and just push people out because of what they think is going on without a clear justification for it. Again, I'm fine with the idea of, you find out that this band actually holds Nazi sympathies and they've stated it before, and it's clearly in their lyrics, and there's the evidence has stacked up to the point where it's pretty clear. And then, hey, we're adults. Let public opinion just choose what to do with that. I feel like most people will know that, and then they'll be like, okay, well, I'm not going to listen to them, I'm not going to buy their music, whatever. It doesn't have to lead to this big thing where now it's, well, nobody can listen to that, and you're not allowed to listen to that. If you ever listen to my other channel where I talk from a more mental health standpoint, there's so much research showing that approach doesn't work anyways. It tends to even exacerbate the problem in a lot of circumstances. The best solutions come out of an open dialogue, so even if people you see as undesirable and problematic are, someone you don't want to speak with, you kind of have to. If you want to fix the problem, you need to get in their world and allow them to feel heard, even if that seems despicable to you. And then you can try to, give them some other ways of thinking about it. I mentioned in my last mental health podcast about Daryl Davis, who's like my big hero right now, because here you have this black guy blues musician who goes out and befriends KKK members and ultimately has had many of them give up their robes, even higher ranking ones. And it all started with conversation. So this tangent's kind of gone on too long, but I just wanted to throw that out there. Please throw Uwata your support. It doesn't make sense that a band, especially one with a Jewish member, is getting flack and having their shows canceled. And, when your shows are canceled, that's your finances. I mean, that's where a band makes their money, with the tickets and then to a greater extent selling merch at the venue. So please do buy some stuff. Buy their new album, buy the previous album. I highly recommend it. Get some shirts, sweatshirts. They have all sorts of cool merch. They've got kind of a cool aesthetic, so you'll be happy wearing a lot of their stuff and supporting them. So yeah, just wanted to put that out there. Sorry if that's too ham-fisted and went on too long, but there you have it. All right, and that's it for this week. Thank you, as always, for listening. Check back next week for, again, our top 10 for the second half of 2018. If you haven't yet listened to the first half, go back to the previous episodes to find that one. Also expect, the week of December 10th, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, watch for all of our written top 10 lists. I am going to have one, as I always do, for each scale. So there will be a top 10 for enjoyability, a top 10 for musicianship, and a top 10 for innovation. So 30 different albums to check out there. Another 30 if you go back and you look to the first half of 2018. But then I'm going to boil it down to just 10 for the next podcast. So be ready for all of that and have your wallet ready. I really hope that you pick these up, because I also consider these to be the albums that you should buy this year. And again, as always, please do, if you enjoy what we're doing here, hit the like button, hit subscribe if you haven't already, hit follow, give us a rating, drop a comment, anything to help spread the word. Share this on your social media, whatever. It really makes a difference. And one more time, please consider going to our Patreon and giving just $1 a month so that we can continue to keep up with things like subscription costs and buy better equipment and all of that good stuff so that we can continue to improve and make this better and better. But as always, I am Flight of Icarus, signing out, and I will see you next week.